Let's try to understand the mystery of Tartaria. Was it a big empire, just a place, or maybe not real at all? People talk about it a lot, from history experts to others with big ideas. How do we figure out what's true or not?
Tartaria shows up in old maps as a huge land in Asia and Eastern Europe. What I find interesting are the big buildings said to be from there. They were very detailed and huge, like the famous buildings from a long time ago. This makes me think about the great building skills they might have had.
We need to think carefully about this. In the past, Tartaria was used by mapmakers for unknown places in Asia. Some buildings might be there, but saying they are only from Tartaria without proof can be wrong. Science should help us understand this better.
Isn't it interesting how Tartaria mixes geography, culture, and imagination? It makes us think about how we create stories of the past. How we see Tartaria shows how our views can change history. Could it also show important exchanges between East and West that we missed?
If Tartaria was just for unknown places, why do we still find it so interesting? Are we looking for hidden truths? Maybe we are dreaming of things not yet discovered when we talk about these lost empires. Let's change our talk to things we can touch, artifacts and documents. What kind of evidence shows there was a big Tartarian empire? It's exciting to think about what remains hidden in archives or underground.
There are maps and papers that show a big Tartarian area. Some old maps called large parts of Asia and Europe Tartaria. Besides maps, we see strange buildings in these places. Buildings with complex designs more advanced than their time. What do they tell us if they were really part of Tartaria?
It's important to look at these things carefully. Mapmakers often used general names like Tartaria for unknown regions, but that does not prove an empire existed. Amazing buildings might be wrongly classified using carbon dating, and other science can help confirm the origins of these structures without making guesses.
Remember, these artifacts and papers are not just simple history. They connect with the social and political life of their time. Did calling a big area Tartaria show Europeans' view or mystery of the East? Maybe these maps tell stories more than facts. How does our understanding change if we look at them through a cultural or political view?
As we try to build the story of history, are we only looking for what we already believe? Or are we open to what these artifacts really tell us? Could seeing them with modern eyes make us miss their true meaning?
It's interesting to think about these less-known history parts. Some Tartarian buildings are said to align with stars or have sound that affects human thought. Are these just accidents, or were they signs of a smart society?
While these ideas are interesting, we should base our ideas on solid science. Seeing the same star patterns in old buildings all over the world might show shared astronomy, not just Tartarian ideas. We need strong scientific checking to avoid stretching their historical meanings.
That's a good point, Ryan. But we should not ignore the deeper meaning. What do these cultural connections say about old societies' views of the world? Looking into this can help us see the shared human stories in these artifacts.
We seem to be dealing with unclear evidence, and how we understand history. Are our ways of seeing history strong enough for the strange and unknown? Why was Tartaria erased from history? Who gains if it is suppressed? Have other powerful civilizations been hidden in our textbooks?
Good point, Michelle. Think about the hidden histories of places like Kush or the Indus Valley. If Tartaria had something advanced, it might have been a threat. Was its removal a way to keep a certain story?
Let's look at the facts before jumping to conclusions. Sometimes histories are missing because records didn't survive. We must be careful not to assume there's a plan behind it without proof, but looking at these gaps closely makes sense.
You both make good points. Silence in history tells us a lot. What history doesn't say can be as important as what it does. Are these gaps just missing pieces, or is there a choice behind them about whose stories get told?
Are we just putting pieces of a big puzzle back together, or do our biases stop us from seeing clearly? Histories like Tartaria make us think again. Do we ignore these forgotten places because they don't fit our idea of progress?
And think about this. Who writes history? Usually, it's those in power. If Tartaria had ideas that challenged the powers, maybe it was easier not to write about it. How do we explain the advanced things they left behind that seem too modern?
We need to balance guesses with careful study. Now we have tools like radiocarbon dating and satellite pictures to check historical stories. These help us find facts beyond just stories or myths.
That's true, Ryan, but sometimes people see science as unbiased compared to our human biases. Stories like Tartaria's remind us of different ways of seeing the world. We must keep these links for our shared history.
Are we just looking at the easy histories, or should we be curious about the hidden ones too? If we look again at what was called myth, we might change how we see our past. As we learn more about Tartaria, how much do myth and modern culture affect how we see this empire? Are we just adding our ideas to missing parts of history?
That's interesting, Michelle. Think about it, many modern trends like steampunk connect with the idea of lost advanced societies. The big and detailed buildings of Tartaria link to a wish for progress we never reached.
But we need to be careful. Adding Tartarian myths to today's culture, like in movies and books, can hide true history. These stories are fun, but they can mix things up in academic talks if not checked by science and history.
Isn't that wonderful, though? Myths are important to culture. They show our hopes and fears. Tartaria's myths might show how curious we are about perfect worlds and mysterious histories. Could it also mean we want to connect to our history through these invented stories?
Exactly, Sonia. Are we just seeing Tartaria as a place for our lost dreams of what people could do? Does mixing myth with reality show a timeline of human ideas we haven't explored yet?
This mix of myth and reality might show that human greatness goes up and down. Think about old buildings that are hard to explain. Are they from societies more advanced than we thought, like Tartaria legends?
Although these ideas are exciting, we should base them on evidence. For example, the alignment of old buildings with stars is well known in many cultures. It's likely common knowledge, not just from one lost civilization.
But these links shouldn't make us ignore Tartaria. The myths we create around it push us to look deeper at our shared stories and history changes. They connect old times with new ideas, showing that myths are a key part of human past.
Maybe the real story of Tartaria, whether remembered or as myths, makes us rethink how we study history. Should we see myths as not just fake stories, but as complex parts of human civilization, turning past mysteries into talks for the future? Are we changing history or making new myths with Tartaria? Each view is different, but what does it mean for how we see history itself?
Think about famous cities like Atlantis. Tartaria, like these, helps us explore human potential and lost knowledge. New building methods and big cultural exchanges make me think, are we finding lost truths or telling new stories?
While discoveries about Tartaria are exciting, we must stick to science. New techniques like satellite images and carbon dating help us tell fact from legend. Myths inspire us, but facts make a strong history.
Legends mixing with history show a big cultural trend. Myths show our shared beliefs, hopes, and fears. With stories like Tartaria, can we look at not just old buildings, but also the stories that shape cultures?
Myths are interesting because they are not clear-cut. With Tartaria, can the mix of myth and reality help us see history in a new way?
Tartaria makes me think of great things societies did that are now lost. Do these myths give us a hint about lost skills and sciences that were too advanced but important for the future?
We also like to think the past was better. Myths can show hidden truths, but science is best for proving facts and keeping history honest.
True, Ryan, but making myths shows timeless values, human curiosity, and wanting to connect through shared history. Can looking at these myths help us rethink our cultural and intellectual past?
Maybe the real worth is not finding a real Tartaria, but in how these myths challenge and grow our usual knowledge. Can they help us change how we see history to find greater truths?